There seems to be an awful lot of sad stories in the news today, and there are thousands missing. Does anybody care? We built a channel where we talk about those faces. Talking News with Debbie. Cassie Barnes has still not been found, and it's been 2 years since her case first hit the spotlight. Breaking. Chad Gable and Lori Vallow both behind bars. Sarah Galloway was found. She wasn't found alive. What happened to Sarah Galloway?
It's too heartbreaking to share.
Children are still missing. Children like Dorsey. You're in shame. You just got away with it. Welcome to Talking News. Hello everyone. My name is Debbie. We use big stories to push little faces.
Jason.
Hello everyone, welcome to Chasing a Murderer Talking News. Today we are doing a Chasing a Murderer episode, Life Beyond the Grave, Part 51, attached to the Lori Vallow case. I would like to take this time to remind everyone, because we have several of our family members writing in comments, that tomorrow, Wednesday, 2022, Netflix will be starting their series attached to this case called Sins of Our Mother. But before I get started, I would like to ask you guys to take a moment to subscribe and like, because without that, all this work is pretty much for nothing, and I really could use some help here. Thank you everyone that has been very supportive of this channel. Alright, if you'd like to see more, guys, you can also donate to my Patreon page, Chasing a Murderer. So let's go ahead and get started. You know I like to get to it. We're dealing with a very horrific case that we're wondering, how did we get to this point to where a mother would take lives of her own 2 children? We are learning that Lori Vallow was actually a Mormon. And she's been a very faithful Mormon her entire life. Her family was Mormon. But in 2015, there's a celestial event that is placing fear in a lot of believers of end days. So you have a lot of preppers that's attached to the LDS. Some are just preparing because that is something they like to do in case there's ever something like a hurricane or an outage. But there are people who believe in doomsday, so chaos and destruction approaching. 2014 and 2015, there will be 4 blood moons, so a tetrad. Something some people are calling rare, and we'll go into more details on this in a second. So you have predictions of apocalyptic events that consume many minds throughout human history. In fact, humanity has felt that there's a collapse of civilization and destruction of the planet Earth itself. And many people of the Christian and Hebrew faith believe that there is a Messiah returning to Earth. But first, you have the signs of tribulations, a lot of predictions said to happen in the lifetime of the predictor. And let's go over a few of those names that you're going to be familiar with in this story, who have their own agendas. So you have Chad Gable, Lori Vallow, Julie Rowe, Hector Sosa, Melanie Gibb, David Warwick, Zulema, Melanie Boudreau, Alex Cox, just to name a few. They're searching for these belief systems and signs, and sometimes it seems to include folklore, sacred text, and a whole lot of prophesized events. 6,000 years of most likely celestial predictions and seeking the Almighty. We learned that Chad Gable has been building up these events since at least 1988 through visions of a national invasion, starvation or famine, economic collapse, and the return of Christ. And even more so, he believes that his children slash family play a huge part in the rebuilding process after the chaos. While Chad and his family are in Salem or near Rexburg, Idaho, Lori Vallow is miles away in Hawaii, preparing to move back to Arizona. Several witnesses of her close friends and family say it's around that time that she's really getting into these teachings. One of Lori Vallow's very good friends in Hawaii says that she talks about end days tirelessly, and she seems to be very consumed by the fear, and like many people in the future will witness. Lori mentions the fact that she ought to drive her car off the cliff with her children. She also suggests that everyone ought to do it together. No one's really certain of how Lori thinks, especially given what happens in the future, but it seems to be at this time that Lori has a certain fear that disaster's ahead, and she's afraid for herself, her children, and everyone else around her. This is very familiar to many cults or occults where they speak of end days, and you've seen mass suicide thoughts. But no one takes her seriously. Like oftentimes it seems, they just kind of brush it off. The signs are there that Lori has some kind of struggle. So we're learning she has a temperament issue. She has a fear issue. And she's very easily persuaded that end days are approaching. And it just seems to me that family, friends, really do not see how hard Lori's alarm signal is blaring during this time. There's one man I'm pretty certain that knows for sure, and that's her husband, Charles Vallow. He must know better than everyone his wife's mental state, but he doesn't seem to worry. As long as she cares for JJ, feeds JJ, things are okay. I've heard this several times as I've researched this story, and it's led me to believe that there might be more going on with how people knew, how Lori worked, than they care to share. There was a whole lot of turning the other cheek when it comes to Lori Vallow, and it seemed to touch every single person that knew her. And you think to yourself, who could believe such things? And you might be surprised to learn that there was a poll conducted in 2012 in 20 countries, and 14% of the people believe that the end days were soon coming. But this doesn't just involve the second coming of Jesus Christ. This involves things like nuclear fallout and things like computers taking over the world. So we're learning that as long as we can look back, people like Julie Rowe and Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow have looked into the sky for answers. And men have been smitten with fear and excitement for as long as we can remember, especially looking for the sign of God in the dark abyss above our heads. For many, many of thousands of years, solar eclipses have been quite dramatic. The moon, 400 times smaller than our sun, but also 400 miles closer to our planet. To many, this is no rare or coincidence when the lunar eclipse falls upon us. But before, science was able to calculate and predict things as well as they do today, you ever heard the term once in a blue moon? Well, there is such a thing as a blue moon, and it happened in 2018. But what exactly is a super blood moon? After all, it is, to these group of people, one of the biggest signs of the second coming. Well, I could go all day explaining this one, but we're going to try to cut this short as possible, but I do like details. So when the moon makes its closest approach to Earth, because it has an elliptical orbit, it's called a perigee. So when the moon's full and it's in that perfect spot, it's referred to as the supermoon. And guys, just so that you know, I'm still working on this. I still haven't been able to work out all the dates of the moon and the Jewish holidays. There's just so much to this case. Because those of you who know Tylee and JJ in the future will disappear. And those dates must mean something. I have learned, however, that Jewish holidays are connected to a lot of the celestial alignments, including the blood moon and some pretty interesting facts and events that kind of line up with the blood moon, which is where, everything is just lined up perfectly. The blood moon is when the moon and Earth, or Earth, cast its shadow upon the moon. According to NASA, what is uncommon is the total lunar eclipse to coincide with a supermoon. There have been 5 such events since 1900 up until 1982, at least at the time this article was written, and it won't be repeated until 2033. They mentioned that this event can happen every 18 years, a period referred to as Saros. And in 2015, the supermoon eclipse is the first in Saros 137. And there will be 7 more supermoon eclipses in this series. I think the last in December of 2141. Interestingly, Chad Daybell, Julie Rowe, David Warwick, many of these guys aren't even going by just the Book of Mormon or the Bible. They're going by Judaism and even folklore, looking for verses or anything pointing to any clue to the second coming. As in Matthew 24, prophecies that in the end times there will be signs in the heavens that will point to his soon return and lead to the repentance of many. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light. And then shall appear a sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. I had to put that in. I did it on the video before, but I messed it up pretty bad. So here you go. They're using verses like this to prove their point and to look to the things like the blood moon as signs. And we are not only dealing with, during this time, one blood moon. In fact, they call it a blue moon tetrad. A lot of them saying, again, signs of our times. And one of the main people leading this, as I mentioned in the video before, is the guy that goes by Hagee. And I'm hoping I'm pronouncing his name correctly because I didn't know who he was until recently. He had written a book about these end times and biblical prophecy and how these 4 blood moons is something that chimes. There's something about the change. He even went as far as to connect key events in Jewish history to several sets of the 4 lunar eclipses, events in Israel's very significant history. You had the Passover of 2015. After all, it's been 2,000 years since a Messiah has walked the earth. And it's been a long time since we've had these eclipses with no partial eclipses in between. Hagee claimed that this event that was happening in 2015 had a great significance for the Jewish people, and he listed his proof. A blood moon tetrad occurred between 1493 and 94, immediately following the expulsion of the Jews from Spain. A blood moon tetrad occurred between 1949 and 1950 on Passover, coming right after the 1948 rebirth of an independent Jewish state, which was followed by the War of Independence. Finally, a blood moon tetrad occurred between 1967 and 1968, following the 1967 Six-Day War, during which Israel liberated the entire city of Jerusalem, including the Temple Mount, where the first and second temples once stood. And now Jerusalem is the capital of the Jewish state. According to the believers, they calculate using the verses from the book of Revelation. The last days will close with the final momentous 7-year period. And according to this calculation, financial collapses that occurred in the last 40 years happened in the year of one of those Jewish holidays. And it was 973, 1980, 1987, 2000, 2001, 2007, and 2008. They claim that the Great Depression also is included in 1929. It began, I'm going to spell it for you guys. It's Shemitah. And people like Haggy Chad Daybell, Julie Rowe, Hector Soso, they're warning of these financial collapses and that they are God's judgment. They look towards verses such as, "Well, you who live in the market district, all your merchants will be wiped out. All who trade with silver will be destroyed." Count of 7 Sabbath years, 7 times 7 years, so that 7 Sabbath years amount to the period of the 49 years. Then have the trumpets sounded everywhere on the 10th day of the 7th month. And shall I repeat that for you guys? Trumpets sounded everywhere on the 10th day of the 7th month. Easter egg, okay? I have a lot of Easter eggs, guys. On the day of the atonement, sound the trumpet throughout the land. Consecrate the 15th year and proclaim the liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you. Each of you is to return to your family property and to your own clan. So when did Charles Vallow get shot, guys? It's very interesting, that date to me. Now just know that Jubilee for Israel is not really something they're seeing, because rabbis say that all 12 tribes must return to their allotted lands before Jubilee begins. And when I get time, I'll finish putting this together, especially with the dates with the Jewish holidays, and to reach more on the atonement. One thing you should understand, that the second new year, the new year for the tithing of the animals for the temple sacrifices. So that's just a brief overview, guys. I'm just going to go ahead and skip this and maybe cover more later because there's so much to it. Now, quickly, I did read off a date for 7/10. We know that Charles Vallow was shot 7/11, but I still think that a lot of these events and attached to this case, they have some more meaning to it that we still haven't uncovered. And then again, there may be no biblical connection as far as numbers. We just don't know yet. So we've learned that Lori Vallow's family is not a very happy household. While Lori attempts to be very proud of her husband, Charles Vallow, bragging that he was at times a pro baseball player, depending on who she's speaking to, sometimes being major league. Behind the scenes, she seems to be disgusted with Charles at times, and so the children seem to feed off this energy, and they're giving Charles a horrible time, sometimes even getting nearly physical. Lori Vallow admits that Colby Ryan is quite mouthy himself during these years, and the kids seem to lack a lot of respect for their father. And people like Julie Rowe during this time are getting a lot of heat from members of the LDS Church. And what I have found based on the research, it seems that Julie Rowe is starting to get a bit bothered by this. But parts of her wants to keep going. She's worrying about, her membership of the church and how this is going to be affected if she keeps going this same path. People are saying things like, isn't the definition of priestcraft preaching for gain? And they accuse people like Chad Daybell and Julie Rowe, especially Julie Rowe, of being part of this priestcraft because she's gaining off of her own religion. Remember, Julie Rowe isn't just supporting the second coming of Jesus Christ. She has a little practitioner with her, goes by Spencer Watson, having energy calls, one of them being July 30th. And there, Julie had blogs on all of these topics, but her website has since deleted everything. Another person has a strong opinion about Julie Rowe, and goes like this. I'm no doctor, John, but you can probably confirm this. She sounds off her rocker. Not sane. I've seen and heard people with mental problems, and they talk just like her. I feel bad for the people that have cashed in their 401k, sold homes, etc., all to follow a loony with more than an apparent problem. Hopefully, she gets help soon. While others seem to empathize with her, but still, in the same breath, call her loony, say, yes, while I may be able to empathize with the sickness and the delusions of the people and their followers, that does not mean that they're not ultimately dangerous, in my opinion. So you have people that understand that what they're doing and teaching to people can be dangerous. And here's what they say in 2015. These people call it like they see it. They believe that these teachings are going to end basically creating dangerous situations for them or their followers. This person sounds more like a prophet than them two. Another comment says that if they're not already on the radar of the stake presidents, eventually this is going to be something where they start sending announcement to the ward, the general conference, where they send out statements and warnings about people who are implying that they have church endorsement while teaching, well, stuff that they claim to be doctrine that is approved by the church. These people are actually challenging the religious and moral values of the advocate, unwarranted confrontation with the spouse of family members as a means of reaching one's potential. They imitate sacred rites and ceremonies, foster physical contact among participants, meet into the late evening or the early morning hours. Something you'll notice that Melanie Gibb, when she comes into the picture, they do oftentimes. Encourage open confessions or disclosure of personal information normally discussed only with confidential settings. Cause a husband and wife to be paired with other parties. That's very important, guys, that you remember this one. We strongly counsel against affiliation with any such groups. So this is stuff the church notices, that many people belonging to the LDS, they're kind of drifting their own direction and making their own rules. So we're in the year of 2015, and they're talking about some very dangerous teachings with multiple groups. So it's not just Chad and Julie Rowe that's doing this. But because Julie Rowe has gained so much popularity among the LDS, she has become one of their main concerns. And I don't think the church realizes that the person behind her, pushing her to be so open, is really Chad Daybell. Because here he is. He's in the shadows of his starlight, Julie Rowe, and he has private meetings all the time. I mean, constantly. And if you were to go to Julie Rowe's website, which is now deleted, you would see things in this time period supporting the second coming, saying that, well, she shares this quote, that ye might know of a coming of Jesus Christ, the Son of God, the Father of heaven and of earth, the Creator of all things from the beginning, and that ye might know of the signs of his coming, to the intent that ye might believe and on his name. I don't have time to cover all that she posts on the end times, but I will post a few here. It's very important that we understand Another Voice of Warning, their website, also known as AVOW, that they were created early 2000, and by 2010, it was publishing LDS authors and books, and the website had grown quite popular among preppers. Initially, the site was owned and operated by Roger K. Young. He was also a visionary author. And in 2015, AVAL creators were pushing visions of the future and writing about tent cities. And here's a few examples of, what they say on that website. And just know that Roger K. Young is one of the first ones to really start pushing, at least on AVAL, making money off of these believers. And they could set up later on their own little web pages with their own little stores. And one of their favorite people there is Chad Daybell. He becomes quite popular and wanted on that website. So let's talk a little bit more about Lori Vallow while she's in Hawaii. According to a witness later and a friend of Tylee, we'll call her Alex for now, she says that she met Tylee when they lived in Hawaii a few years ago, and Lori served as the children's leader at their church. Now, I believe they lived in Princeville, and she said that she and Tylee quickly became best friends while living a few doors down from each other in Hawaii. And here's her take on what Tylee was like. She said, quote, she was always so happy, and she loved JJ, and she did everything with him. Now, again, this is a witness saying that Tylee adored her mother. She said that Tylee had a very close and loving relationship with Lori, at least that when she knew them. So something that this girl remembers is the fact that Lori used to make cookies, oatmeal and chocolate chip cookies for the girls. And we learned from April Raymond, Lori's friend, that Lori was very smitten on the author who writes futuristic books, or better word, prophesies books in the second coming of Jesus Christ. Chad Daybell, a married man to his librarian wife Tammy Daybell, which blessed him with 5 beautiful children. And we learned that Chad is connecting with several other people who walk the same path, especially near-death experiences. But now he's starting to draw closer to spiritual healers, fiction writers. He talks with spirits and ghosts. And now he's here to carry out prophecies, or at least help. What people don't realize, though, is Lori actually attempted to be part of a book writing group of people. She tried to write 1 or 2 books, but it never worked out for her. And Lori is very interested in Chad Daybell, and she's digging deeper and deeper into this group of people. One of them being Julie Rowe, who speaks to angels on a daily basis, sometimes hourly. Lori's friend April said in I guess it was a show, Inside Edition, quote, she would bring it up more and more often, and I would see that, and that she was becoming more involved with it, and it was kind of becoming more of a focal point in her life. Lori has always been a fan of Chad's books, and so that's how I first heard about Chad, from Lori. She would talk about this author that she was really interested in and really connected with his work. I would describe her as a super fan. Quite interesting stuff. We know also that Julie Rowe is claiming to be a healer, but she's also a supporter of Satan being part of our lives and even demons. She is claiming that she's able to draw demons out of people's bodies with her positive energy. And so I don't have time, and I would love to do this, is share more on what energy healers do, but I'm already putting so many details in here. But some of the stuff you do need to know is the fact that these people believe that their dead ancestors are in the room with them, and they desire to deliver messages. And they're encouraging other people that they have gifts to come forward and join this group, and they will share their gifts and use them together. So that's important for you to understand. And I've listened to a few of her little energy sessions, and I was not very impressed, but some people, I guess, they're impressed with it. So it's important to understand, a little bit about this emotional code and its simplest and easiest, fastest method to understand it. Just know that they use ways to get rid of emotional baggage, which consist of actual energies of emotional events, which these energies are described as being able to be captured in one's body, and you can carry this around with you. They distort the normal energy field of your body, creating pain, malfunction, and all manners of disease, even cancer. But they are the driving force behind depression, anxiety, phobias, and PTSD. And don't forget about mental illness. But I'm finding that this energy code teaching within this group is actually creating a little bit more problems for those with mental disorders, making things worse for them, actually. Now, Julie said that the reason why she does this emotional code is that she was prompted from a special presence. Quote, "It was made known to me that I was to research Dr. Nelson and the emotional code and the body code." Now, when she speaks like this, where it was made known to her, she's seeing something or hearing something that other people do not. In many cases, it's a higher power. And they give her visions. And she continues with, "I was shown repeatedly that I was to be involved in this work in helping myself, my family, and others heal from illness and disease." So really, that's not a bad thing, is it, to want to help people? But she continues with, "It was made clear to me that the work would not only benefit me, but also my ancestors on the other side of the veil. It was made clear to me that this form of energy healing would be used in tent cities, as well as the New Jerusalem, and into the millennium." Sorry, guys, I get tongue twisted so badly sometimes. So there, through her own words, she admits she's speaking with a higher power. She's getting visions, and that this is going to be useful for the tent cities that are going to happen in her lifetime. And this is not a question, this is fact. And this is something to remember, since Lori Vallow will admire this woman at least up to a certain point. I went way over my time, guys, and I'm going to try to do more of the timeline and less of the details of events like the blood moon, unless we absolutely feel like we need to add that. So, anyways, first of all, before I close out, I want to say thank you to all my subscribers and people who like and comment, and especially to those that are giving on Patreon on Chasing a Murderer. And a super thanks to those of you who share the videos of our missing girls, children, and men. Thank you so much for caring, guys. Love you, and I'll see you the next part of the series.